So why was the phial of Galadriel both so important item and also so important in the larger story of Galadriel? Well, a lot of the background to the story goes back a long way into the histories, way before War of the Rings, even before the One Ring was created. It could be stated to start when a large proportion of the Elvish people travelled over the sea to Aman, away from the shores of Middle-earth. Within these elves there was a group of elves known as the Noldor. These were great smiths and creators of items among the elves, but the greatest among them was an elf called Fëanor. Now Fëanor was also Galadriel's uncle. Aman was supposed to be a safe place, protected by the Valar, away from the problems of Middle-earth, where the evil Valar Melkor, who would later be named Morgoth, had his kingdom. Now at this time, Sauron was just one of the many servants of Melkor. Valar had originally created two huge lamps set on poles higher than a mountain, basically at the north and south of the world. These lamps were destroyed by Melkor in an early war against the Valar, and their destruction also damaged and destroyed a lot of the world. The lamps were later replaced by two gigantic trees which glowed with light, and these trees grew in Aman, where it was hoped they would now be safe from Melkor. Now Fëanor, being the great craftsman he was, created a substance called Silmar, which he forged into 3 crystals. He placed these crystals near the 2 trees so they could absorb some of the light from the trees. These gems would then shine with the captured brilliance of the 2 trees and were blessed by the Valar, causing them to burn any evil being holding them. These gems became known as the Silmarils, the most prized possession of the elves and their greatest work. Fëanor, however, jealously guarded the jewels and kept them locked up, safe as he thought from any harm, but in this he was in error. Melkor had hated the light of the trees just like he hated the light from the lamps before them. And Melkor allied himself with a huge spider-like creature called Ungoliant. This spider-like creature could create a web of sunlight, so it would hide both the spider and Melkor while they're in Aman. The Valar noticed the darkness moving but didn't know what it was. Before they could intervene, Melkor and the spider attacked the 2 trees and killed them. Around the same time they also killed Finwë, king of the Noldor, who was also Fëanor's father. During the killing they also stole many jewels stored in the city that he lived in, including the famed Silmarils. Now Valar, learning of the attack but not knowing the details, tried to heal the 2 trees and asked Fëanor for the light of the Silmarils to aid in the healing. Fëanor refused, only later finding out that the jewels were stolen and his father killed. And while the trees themselves couldn't be revived, a single fruit from each tree was recovered, and these eventually became the sun and the moon. Fëanor then renamed Melkor Morgoth, or Black Foe of the World. With Morgoth and Ungoliant having fled from Aman, Morgoth had promised Ungoliant the gems he had stolen as a reward for the spider's help. Reluctantly, he handed over some of the gems to the spider, which grew more powerful as it consumed the gems, but Morgoth refused to hand over the Silmarils. Morgoth was then rescued by the Balrogs arriving, who attacked the spider. Balrogs had fiery whips which destroyed the black webs and injured the spider, who then fled from the Balrogs and left Morgoth with the Silmarils. Back in Aman, Fëanor swore an oath. It was sworn by his 7 sons, but not by Galadriel. The oath was sworn in the name of Eru, the creator of the world and also the creator of the Valar. The swearers of the oath said that they would not rest till they regained the Silmarils, and additionally they would make war upon anyone that kept the Silmarils from them. Initially it was just supposed to be Morgoth, but it didn't quite turn out that way. Fëanor, his sons, Galadriel, and a great host of elves then left Aman to make war on Morgoth, doing many bad acts along the way. But one of the Valar, called Mandos, pronounced the doom of the Noldor, also known as the Doom of Mandos. Doom basically said that the oath of Fëanor would bring them nothing but sadness, and more elvish blood would be spilled over this cause. He also banned the elves from returning to Aman. Now some of the elves, including Galadriel's father Finarfin, at this point decided to repent and ask forgiveness of the Valar, but many, including Galadriel, decided to carry on. Now, the book The Silmarillion gives a detailed account of the long story of what happened after. The key details were there was a war against Morgoth, resulted in the quick death of Fëanor, and later, after a few minor victories for the elves, Morgoth then defeated most of the elves, with only a few positive outcomes along the way. One of these positive outcomes was that Erendil, the mariner, obtained a single Silmaril and managed to sail to Aman and beg the Valar to help stop Morgoth before everyone was lost, both humans and elves. Now the Valar, aided by a massive host of elves and a handful of survivors in Middle-earth, then attacked Morgoth and utterly destroyed him and all of his forces. Now, Erendil, who wasn't allowed to remain in Aman, was put in a sailing ship sailing among the stars. With him went the remaining Silmaril, shining light down onto Middle-earth. During the war against Morgoth, a massive dragon attempted to kill Erendil and end the light of the Silmaril, but Erendil killed the dragon. The body of the dragon, falling back to Earth, combined with the actions of the other Valar and Morgoth, meant that much of what had been the west coast of Middle-earth sank below the seas. Erendil, who was also the father of Elrond and the great ancestor of Aragorn, remained sailing in the sky among the stars during the War of the Ring. It is this light from the star, or rather light from the Silmaril, that was captured in the star glass or phial of Galadriel, which is why the light was so powerful, especially against Shelob or other things of darkness. Galadriel, in handing over the light of the Silmaril to Frodo, was a massive act of contrition to the Valar, basically renouncing her claim to the Silmaril and all the bad acts which had been committed in an attempt to reclaim them. Important conversation with Frodo, Galadriel says, "I passed the test, will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel." It's not only a statement about her giving up the powers of her elven ring and the claim to the One Ring, but also realising that she is giving up her claim to the Silmarils, along with her kingdom in Middle-earth, and will return to Aman, where her father, Finarfin, is the king of the Noldor elves. So she would go from being Queen of Lorien and member of the White Council to just Galadriel, the naughty elf, returning home to her father.